Anime has steadily become a popular Japanese phenomenon, the stylized animation accounting for 60% of all animated TV shows in 2016, and its comic/graphic novel counterpart manga originating as far back as the 19th century. Both forms of media revolve around countless genres and themes, for example horror, mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. Within the romance category is a unique subgenre that focuses on a minority group, Yaoi and Yuri. Yaoi, or boys love/BL, is a subgenre of romance focusing mostly or even exclusively on relationships between men, rather than a gay romance subplot that is observed in Western media. Yuri is its female counterpart, focusing on relationships between women. A common misconception is that Yaoi and Yuri is always hentai, always adult, and hones in on the mature nature of these relationships. But this isn't always true. Many anime series and shows display day-to-day life with only suggested intimacy, if any at all, within these genres. These subgenres are not free from critique, however, with some dissenters finding them to be fraught with issues. As somebody who has watched both Yaoi and Yuri, and who is a member of the LGBT community, I've also noted differences in and frequency of these critiques in regards to Yaoi and Yuri. I would also like to discuss these, as well as how the subgenre has impacted the LGBT community as a whole. The main concern with Yaoi is the prevalence of R and SA, R being grape without the G, and I'm sure you can decipher what SA is. While obviously not present in every single instance of Yaoi, it is a theme with a regularity to warrant being a valid complaint. The act is sometimes romanticized, the semi, the dominant, normally older male partner, committing the act against the yuki, the submissive male partner, due to love or passion, and it's not viewed as a violent act of the semi, but is almost the fault of the yuki for being irresistible. That the semi can't control themselves, or not being loving enough towards the semi, which is a way to absolve the semi of guilt. Some yukis are previously straight, or believe themselves to be straight, and the R in SA is a plot device to allow the yuki to start to fall in love with the semi and lead to consensual activity. It is also worth noting that there's been a long-held belief in Japanese society that women who have been R'd should be shunned or looked down on because they are now tainted. Whereas in Yaoi, a man who has been R'd is still seen as being imbued with innocence, which may explain the lack of R and SA within the Yuri genre. In contrast, Yuri does not have this same criticism. Factors in this is that many Yuris revolve around females in an equal power dynamic and within a similar age range, as well as less frequent SA and R scenes. Yaoi sometimes involves men in a significant age gap, Misaki being 18 when he met a 28-year-old Akiko in Junju Romantica, this adding an extra layer to the themes of R and SA. Yuris, on the other hand, often focus on teenage girls or young women, meaning the girls are at stages in their lives that are similar. Which may sound creepy, but Yuri also tends to focus more on the emotional, romantic, and spiritual connection between women. Therefore, unless it is an explicitly adult-targeted form of media such as hentai, physical intimacy does not play as much of a bigger role as it does when compared to Yaoi. Yuri can still be fetishized, of course, although this is likely a product of society's objectification of lesbian couples rather than the content of media itself, seeing as Yuri, as well as Yaoi, simply has kissing and implied intimacy. However, when it comes to the implied intimacy, Yaoi tends to go a little bit further. Homophobia is something both genres don't always have a focal point on. Some consider these animes and mangas to be escapist fantasies, allowing gay couples to live out their lives just as straight anime couples do. Critics note how this may lead to unrealistic views of gay couples by removing the struggle, and isn't a realistic or true portrayal of LGBT struggles, leading to a further romanticized and idealized perspective of gay characters. Leading on from a previously mentioned point, there is a trope of many supposed straight characters, normally yukis, consistently affirming that they're not gay and they can't be in love with a guy, portraying gay as being something that should be denied or something that cannot be accepted. With the lack of homophobia for some of these thoughts and feelings to exist, don't make much sense. And again, this is a problem that is normally seen within Yaoi. I've watched a lot more Yuris than Yaoi, and I can't think of a specific example within a Yuri where one of the female characters is like, no, I can't love that girl because I'm a girl too. Another criticism levelled at the Yaoi genre is that it isn't necessarily targeting gay men, which is the focus of the genre. Most Yaoi fans are teenage girls or young women to the point they have their own name. For Joshi, I can't speak Japanese, okay? I can barely speak Mandarin, please forgive. The male equivalent is Fudanshi. I can't speak Japanese again. Sorry. The female readership in Thailand is estimated at around 50%, which is fairly 50-50, although the genre is marketed towards women and girls, sometimes even bisexual and heterosexual males, not necessarily for gay men. According to online surveys in the UK and United States, the percentage of male fans range between 10 to 25%. Yuri, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have a targeted gender demographic. Yuri tends to be made with the thought that anybody can read this. It isn't specifically tailored towards a specific audience, although some Yuris can be tailored towards heterosexual men. The genders of the authors who write certain pieces, there's also a massive gap there. For example, female-written yaoi is a lot more common than male-written yaoi. I decided to write down and categorize all of the yuris and yaois that I have watched or read, and categorize them into whether they were written by a male or female. Some of them I couldn't actually write down and put into a category because some of them used unisex pen names or they were fairly unknown and their gender was never stated. However, definitively, 6 pieces that I have consumed of yaoi were written by a female and only 1 was written by a male. Granted, Junju Romantica and Sekai Ichi Hatsukoi were both written by the same person. That's still a difference in just what I consume. And in comparison to that, female-written Yuri I have consumed 6 of, whereas male-written Yuri I've consumed 3 of. So, while it is still mostly females writing Yuri, there are males that write Yuri also. I thought that was an interesting point to bring up when we're talking about target audiences and who these pieces are manufactured for. So, now I've gone over all of the issues regarding yaoi and Yuri, I think I want to talk about homosexuality in Japan as a whole. Japan tends to be one of the more liberal-leaning Asian countries, although there is still the societal expectation for one to marry and have lots of babies. This can be seen throughout all of Asia, although perhaps media is changing its attitudes towards LGBT people. Many mangas and animes from what I've seen don't necessarily go into transgenderism as a whole, and so the teapot of the LGBT community may be left out. The only thing that I can particularly think of is in Kashimashi Girl Meets Girl, wherein Hazumo is, well, a boy at the start, and then gets yeeted down by an alien spacecraft who is very sorry and says, yes, we can bring Hazumu back to life, but our technology isn't advanced enough to bring him back as he was. We can only bring him back as a girl. So that's the closest thing I've ever seen being yeeted down by alien spacecrafts. It was a strange premise. Japan still does have a long way to go, even with the prevalence of these subgenres being popular. Gay marriage is not legal within Japan, although recent rulings have found that the ban on gay marriage is unconstitutional, which is giving hope to the LGBT people of Japan. If only China could do the same. It's very hard to tell whether or not Yaoi and Yuri has had an impact upon this. Of course, from a marketable stance, you would have to have depictions of same-sex couples be legal in order to sell these things, which would be profitable for Japan. I could go down the entire periods of Japanese history and the history of same-sex relationships in Japan, but I don't have time for that today. I'm sorry. Overall, I recognise there are certain issues and themes within both Yaoi and Yuri that definitely could be addressed to make it more realistic. However, it is just a fantasy, and I don't think it necessarily harms people. Despite what people may say, seeing things in a form of media isn't likely to make you do things you otherwise wouldn't do. Watching violent things on TV isn't going to make somebody go out and do violent things unless they have a predisposition for it. And before anyone jumps in and says, hey, you have a massive problem with drawn CP, why is that any different? If it's just a fantasy and it doesn't harm anyone, well, because there is no evidence that states that people who consume yaoi and yuri are likely to take those on as realistic views of same-sex couples or how they should behave in a same-sex relationship, whereas those who commit crimes against children often have a long backlog of viewing this type of content. In my opinion, the only way in which yaoi and yuri could actually impact people and cause harm is if it's the only exposure to gay couples that people get. And there needs to be a lot more education around the world surrounding gay couples and what it's actually like to be in a gay relationship, focusing on both the joys and the struggles of gay people. That if these characters are of age and this is a fictional setting, it is completely okay for them to indulge in watching and reading these things, as long as they take into account this isn't reality. If this education comes about and people can be more aware, then they won't treat gay people as if they are characters or objects, and I think that's the most important thing. Again, I think it's okay if you want to enjoy these forms of media, as long as you don't take what you see in that media and attempt to apply it to real-life gay couples or gay people. Which can't really be said the same for people who consume and produce CP. I just know that criticism is coming. I just know it's coming. It's not the same thing. These are different things. One is a fictional, fantastical, escapist world, and the other is crime, pure crime, that has a history of being actualized after consuming the material. So what do you guys think? Do you think that yaoi and yuri is cool and should be enjoyed by a wide range of people? Or do you think it's harmful and causes misinformation about gay people to be spread? Or do you think maybe if we have education and allow gay men to write and produce their own yaoi, it could create better representation for gay people? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.